Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Kazdan Azan with Kraz Productions. Today we have somewhat of a special video for you. We're going to be delving a little bit into the early development ages of virtual reality. Now, the 1990s was the product of many successes and failures, and none more so than the hype and popularity of what virtuality could actually become. You've seen constant movie tropes within films like Hackers or TV shows like VR Troopers that tried to piggyback off the concept of virtual reality. You know, Nintendo also released the Virtual Boy, which was an early attempt that gave severe migraines to a lot of people. In fact, the closest thing to virtual reality that we actually got was on the Atari Jaguar of all consoles. Although it was never really released, there were some prototypes released with a fully functional version of Missile Command 3D. But we're not here to talk about any of that today. Today we're here to talk about the Tiger R-Zone, the early attempt to piggyback off of Nintendo's success with the Virtual Boy. Now, I say success very loosely because we all know that the Virtual Boy was considered a commercial failure with a limited library, heavy incidences inducing migraines, as well as a small library of games that just did not captivate the way that people wanted virtual reality to captivate in the 90s. So, without further ado, this is the Tiger R-Zone. Tiger has always been in the gaming market with their selection of cheap LCD electronic games, which for some young children was the only way to get gaming on the go, especially in the 80s and 90s when their parents couldn't afford a Game Boy, an Atari Lynx, or a Game Gear. Seemingly, all kinds of children had these little LCDs, but very rarely did you see anyone with an R-Zone, which is the main focus for today's video. So what is the R-Zone? Well, the R-Zone was an early attempt at virtual reality, and an attempt to really put the LCD gaming experience right in your face. Over the lifetime of the R-Zone, which ran from 1995 to 1997, surprisingly outlasting the Nintendo Virtual Boy, we received 4 reiterations of the system. In front of me, I have 3 of those units, known as the Tiger R-Zone, which is the headgear that is more commonly seen, the R-Zone Super Screen, and the R-Zone XPG. The 4th installment, known as the Data Zone, is one of the rarest of them all, housing a full keyboard and a series of functions such as a calculator, calendar, notepad, phone book, and of course, the ability to play R-Zone cartridges. Speaking of the cartridges, this is Battle Arena Toshinden. As you can see from the cartridge, this is a transparent cartridge. The screen in the middle is where the LCD lights up. These pins plug into the cartridge slot and the game turns on rather instantly. One thing to discuss about the R-Zone and its library of games is that some of them surprisingly can be fun to play. However, playing them may be difficult due to the R-Zone causing headaches just like the Virtual Boy before it. Tiger took quick notice of this and attempted to prolong the life of the R-Zone by creating the Super Screen, which is basically a large projector that also came with overlays for your games to add depth to the experience. This overlay was supplied to me by Jonathan Cade, and I am very grateful for his support. Sadly, the projection for the Super Screen is not all that great. The overall best experience to enjoy these games is with the R-Zone XPG, which was released in mid-1996 and feels much more sturdy than its 2 predecessors. The buttons feel fantastic, and the screen is right in front of you. It doesn't hurt to stare at, and you can enjoy the games as they were intended. As for the Data Zone, which I unfortunately do not own, it is what would later inspire the Gamecom, which would be Tiger's last attempt at the gaming console market. Among my collection of games, safely kept in a soft weather-protected box, I have only a few hard-to-find games like VR Troopers and Panzer Dragoon. I also own Mortal Kombat 3, Primal Rage, Daytona 500, and Indy 500. I won't focus on Indy 500 because emulation for this is easier to do than anything. Speaking of emulation, however, the R-Zone does not have a strong emulation scene and the homebrew scene is non-existent. To make matters worse, ripping the ROMs from these cartridges are often frowned upon because 1, it's illegal, and 2, ripping the ROMs from an LCD game completely destroys the board. With some cartridges being extremely rare, some fans in the small LCD and R-Zone community tend to find this practice offensive. Only 3 games, Indy 500, Batman Forever, and Battle Arena Toshinden, have been ripped to this day. In fact, the R-Zone is so obscured that 1/3 of its library is actually quite rare. Games like Independence Day, Men in Black, Mask of Zorro, VR Troopers, Area 51, Apollo 13, Judge Dredd, and Waterworld are among the rarest of them all. There are 5 other games known to be scheduled for the R-Zone but never released. This includes A Bug's Life, Sonic & Knuckles, Godzilla, Alien vs. Predator, and Star Trek. The entire library for the R-Zone consists of roughly 30 games, more than the Virtual Boy's library. One misconception with the VR Trooper cartridge, however, is that it's often confused with another LCD game by Tiger Electronics known as VR Troopers Worlds Collide. These are 2 totally separate games, and we will talk about that in this video.
The R-Zone and its many variants have always been incredibly hard to record on film, sometimes requiring special lenses or implementing various methods to record gameplay. Regardless of how you do it, the main trick is to remove as much glare as possible. I found that using a cell phone camera works best for the headset and a professional camera works best for the Super Screen. Beginning with the Super Screen, we have two games to showcase, Daytona USA and VR Troopers. We will be looking at VR Troopers on the headset as well for comparison. Before we begin, let's take a close look at the unit. The system has a non-traditional clicky D-pad, plus A, B, C, and D action buttons. There's also the start button, the pause button, the on and off button separately, and of course the sound button. Like all R-Zones, there is also a select button which is used to select characters in each game. Compared to the original R-Zone and the XPG, you'll see that all inputs are the same, but the design is different. The R-Zone Super Screen requires 4 D batteries, has a focus dial on the bottom, a sound dial on the left, and a contrast dial on the right. My Super Screen does need a new light bulb, but for the time being works fine for this video. Because the unit is essentially just projecting the game's image onto a larger screen, upon recording you'll see a ring around the gameplay. Using the focus dial, you can change this. I'm not very good with Daytona USA, but it has some similarities to Indy 500. Moving over to VR Troopers, your main objective is to survive the gauntlet of Grimlord's minions and build points. You can summon other VR Troopers and pick up weapons to fight the enemies. You have a high kick, a low kick, 3 punches, and a spinning wheel throw. I've yet to figure out how to do the spinning wheel, however, but I will be doing a more in-depth video on this in a future VR Troopers video. For comparison, this is how it looks on the headset. The effect is all the same. I find that playing on the Super Screen or the XPG to be much easier. With the headset, we have 3 games, VR Troopers, Primal Rage, and Mortal Kombat 3. Seeing as we've already looked into VR Troopers, we will now switch over to MK3. All fighters in the R-Zone library have roughly the same mechanics. Using the select button on the controller, you can switch between characters. The rulebook will tell you who is who, but I do not own a rule booklet. I prefer to use Sonya, Liu Kang, or Shiva as these 3 are the easiest to discern from the small sprites. Currently I am fighting either Scorpion or Sub-Zero, not sure which. The game is functional, but not much to really gawk about. If Primal Rage ever had a demake, it would be the R-Zone. This is surprisingly a fully functional fighter with reasonably sized sprites. I like to use Diablo or Vertigo when I play Primal Rage on the Atari Jaguar CD, and it just seems fitting to use them here as well. The movesets are within reason and dodging is not difficult. Just like any other fighter, your goal is to deplete the enemy health bar and avoid attacks. If the time runs out, the one with the lowest energy loses, and this one is actually kind of fun. The XPG is a different breed when it comes to R-Zone standards. Your button layout has been improved and a full-size D-pad has been included. All other buttons have been perfectly displayed on the lower portion, and the projector screen now extends from the unit itself. Mine is a bit damaged unfortunately, but I will still be able to play it just fine. Although it's the best way to enjoy these games, it's not without its flaws. For one, it's a little more difficult to record on, and the angle of the screen does stretch the sprites a bit, but it does what it sets out to do, and do it comfortably. The buttons feel fantastic to press, and in your hands the XPG does feel sturdy compared to the headset and the Super Screen. I always feel like I'm about to break or drop the Super Screen, but the XPG fits just right in my hands. This is what recording on the screen looks like. The game you are currently looking at is Star Wars Jedi Adventure, which is a run and gun. Not much to it, but basically just shoot the enemies and dodge as much as you can.
Earlier in the video, when we discussed about VR Troopers, I mentioned that the game for the R-Zone is not the same as VR Troopers When Worlds Collide. In fact, these are 2 totally different LCD games. So with that in mind, we're going to take a quick look at this for comparison. In VR Troopers When Worlds Collide, you now have a throw mechanic. You can now pick up weapons along the way, as well as pendants, which are also featured in the R-Zone version, that restore your health. You can pick up boomerangs and swords. You can also select between Caitlyn, JB, or Ryan anytime you want in the game once you get past level 3. Changing between characters doesn't really give you much of any benefit other than to say that you're allowed to play as a character that you really enjoy. So what are my thoughts on the Tiger R-Zone? Well, let's go ahead and be honest, it's not going to win any awards. But my experiences with it was not all that bad either. Now granted, the headset does give you migraines and it does assault the eyes. The other versions, such as the Super Screen and the XPG, does give you a decent gaming experience. And with over 20 plus cartridges to choose from, you have a way to customize and change your gaming experience. I'm not trying to say that I love the R-Zone, because in reality I don't. It's nothing really to gawk about. But it's fun. If you're a niche collector, go ahead, pick one up. I think it's worth having in your collection for like a 5-minute gameplay, because that's really how long it takes to complete a game. But anyways, I've been KazDanAzan, and thank you so much for watching my video. Hopefully you guys in the R-Zone community, or those who like to critique the R-Zone, have found this video enlightening and somewhat enjoyable. Anyways, take it easy. See you in the next one.